and I don't want to bring you down further, but I note to everybody who is listening to this that less than a week ago we had heinous acts of violence in Minnesota, which is Norm's home state. And I followed some of your comments on it, and frankly, Norm, I was rather moved because I know you took it very hard, as did a lot of people I know
Yeah.
who are from Minnesota. So I thought we should start there and get your perspective on what happened, but also on what you think it means.
So, as you say, I was shattered by this, David, and for a whole host of reasons. I really didn't know Melissa Hortman very well, but I knew her, and I've been around Minnesota politicians a lot, and it was absolutely shocking and stunning. Um, it's also one of those things when you realize that this guy, who, by the way, had an arsenal in his faux police car that was astonishing. A large number of assault rifles and other weapons, a huge amount of ammunition. He clearly had on his list of 70, and with his flyers for the No Kings demonstrations, which some, I'll return to this, but some right wingers vilely tried to turn into him as a supporter of the demonstrations when it was clear that he was going to go and do mass mayhem. This is a man who wanted to go out killing large numbers of people. And it's a reflection of our times, I'm afraid, and of an administration and a culture that now um, do not shrink from violence. That's part of it. For me, also, as a Minnesotan, having seen over many decades a state that, one, had its own uh, checkered at best history. If you read the biographies of Hubert Humphrey, for example, and there are a number of them, um, and if you live there back in an earlier era, Minnesota was a hotbed of racism and anti-Semitism, Minneapolis in particular. Uh, Hubert Humphrey, when he came in as a political figure, and my grandfather, my late grandfather, was a labor leader and was one of the small group that drew him into politics to running for mayor, was a part of this massive effort to try and clean things up and turn it around. And when I grew up there in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, it was a model for the rest of the country on civil discourse, two parties that were different, but not dramatically far apart, and filled with honorable people you could admire and view as role models. When I was at the University of Minnesota, for example, we had seminars, and one of the people I became quite close to was a Republican who'd served as Attorney General named Doug Head, and was just a totally admirable figure, thoughtful, deep, decent, center right, but more center than anything else. Just the kind of person you'd want in public service. And we had decades of figures that you could admire, governors, senators, uh, who were what you'd want. Two parties that really worked to solve problems and work together. That began to change, and it changed before a lot of other states, I would say. In some ways, to use the cliche, Minnesota was like the canary in the coal mine. When you started to see figures like Michelle Bachmann emerge and get notoriety, you could see that this was going from a party of the Doug Heads and Arnie Carlsons and David Dernbergers of the world to the radical populist lunatics. And that's where the Republican Party gravitated to, including before most others. It's the party of Pete Hegseth, for example. Um, and, to see it devolve into this, including right after, with an evenly divided legislature. Minnesota, frankly, is not a blue state, even though it's voted pretty consistently for Democrats for president. It is a purple state, and the state legislature is evenly divided. tied in one house, close to that in the other, and facing deep adversity because of Trump's cuts in the federal budget and issues of their own. They still managed to find a way to come together in a bipartisan fashion and do a budget. And Melissa Hortman was a core part of that. She was one who tried to bring everybody together, even facing all of that adversity. And to see this happen, and to see not just what happened to Melissa and her husband, uh, but when you have a state senator who is shot 9 times and his wife 8 times, and she's shot because she fell on her daughter to keep her daughter from being shot. When you see that this guy didn't just kill Melissa and her husband, but also the family dog. And you know also that he went to other houses first, and because they weren't home, ended up at Melissa's. Um, it's frightening, and among my comments, besides we can get to this, what vile Mike Lee has done, and a continued refusal to apologize or to even consider that what he did was despicable and completely out of bounds. And despite the fact that not uh, more than one or two Republicans in the Senate have even said mild things to try and distinguish themselves from him. What disturbs me as much as anything, David, is that when you get Mike Lee and others who are not in office making fun of political assassinations, it gives a green light to others who are out there, lunatics or people who have just come to believe with the cult that these are their opposition is evil and trying to destroy America and its way of life. It's going to make it easier for